Now, how do you tap into the resources? And this is where it gets much more challenging for those of you who don't have any business experience. So let me conclude by talking about narrative, which is how are you going to shape your story in order to convince these organizations to be able to invest? And to do that, I'm going to simply give you the 10 tips that was proposed by a very successful venture capitalist right here in Boston, Bruce Boothe, a partner at Atlas Ventures. He's got this great list of tips for how to raise money in biotech VC. And I'll just tell you very quickly what they are. You can take a look at the article for yourself. It's online. It was published in 2013. First, know your investor audience. Know what they're looking for. So if it's patient advocacy that you're tapping, know exactly what kind of outcomes they're looking for, the nature of the patients that they're dealing with, and how you might be able to help them. If it's a venture capitalist that's focused just totally on return, then focus on explaining how your results translate into commercializable product. Know your audience. Second, know what you are and what you aren't. By this, Bruce meant you need to be very clear about what you're doing with your venture. You can't be all things to all people. Are you focusing on small molecule, large molecule? Are you a platform company? You're focusing on just one idea? Are you thinking about being a bioinformatics company? Are you actually going to develop drugs? Be very clear about what you want to do. Now, you may not know what you want to do, and that's okay, but before you talk to a VC, you need to figure that out. And the way to do that is by talking to other entrepreneurs, other business people that have had successes, and get them to help you sharpen your pitch to the point where you know exactly what you're about. 3, sell the science. Don't tell a venture capitalist how much money he or she can make by investing in you. That's for them to decide. Talk about what you know best. You're passionate about the science? Talk about the science. The venture capitalist will figure out what the economic proposition might be of the science. That's their job. Your job is to focus on what you're best at. So do that, sell that, and show your passion. 4, make sure your team has some gray hair, but not so much as to lack youthful enthusiasm. Gray hair simply means have some advisors that really understand the business and that they are going to provide you with the kind of guidance that you need. You don't need a lot of them, and you definitely need to have a younger team because part of what venture capital is investing in is that youthful enthusiasm. Very few venture capitalists will put money with a 50 or 60-year-old entrepreneur. Their view is that by the time you're 50 and 60, if you're successful, you ought to be able to invest your own money and create your own startups. You should use their capital. That's not always the case, especially with much bigger ventures. But they're looking for that youthful enthusiasm. So you're already ahead of the game. You've got that, but you need to be able to have that kind of experience to guide you. 5, and I think you already know this from what we've described in terms of the nature of the risks involved in biotech. Biotech R&D is really all about de-risking. That's the term that's used in the industry. So in order for you to address this issue, you need to know intimately what your particular timelines are for the particular projects that you're going to be focusing on, what the risks of those timelines are of slipping, and what the value inflection points are going to be at each of those different timelines. So it's critical that you are able to represent the risk realistically. Venture capitalists know that you're going to be overconfident. In fact, the whole notion of entrepreneurship is based on overconfident. You have to be overconfident to be able to start your own company. They know that, and they'll take that into account. But you want to try to be as measured as possible and be as realistic as possible about the kind of exposures that you're facing. 6, ground your valuation expectations in reality. I know all of us think that our creations are the best in the world and are worth billions of dollars. But the fact is that venture capitalists have to look at it from an investor's perspective. So remember V0, V1, V2. You need to create value, not just for today's investors. You need to be able to show investors that you're going to create value for future investors as you grow the company. If you have too high a valuation today, if you're really overconfident, and let's say that you successfully convince a group of investors that they ought to value you at triple what the underlying value really is. That might feel good right now, but when you go to the next round, and you're going to need a next round, and you can't get an increase over that triple valuation, You're going to face a down round, and if it's a down round, you're viewed as damaged goods. That's going to be very difficult for you to raise money. So sometimes it pays to be a little humble, take a lower valuation at one stage in order to create value for investors, because if you create value for them at the next stage, they're going to want to come back for more, and they'll be in the next round and the next round and the next round. 7, present a credible case for the long-term capital needs of your company and the likely liquidity paths. This is what I was talking about in terms of managing your liquidity needs. It's critical for you to understand not just how much money you need for the next 12 months, but what is your path over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. You need to have that kind of a plan. That plan could be full of noise. It could be very difficult to estimate, but you need to have a plan to show that you've thought about it. And you might not be able to do this on your own, but partner up with somebody that's got experience or has some insights, some of the gray hairs that you're going to be looking to get advice from to get that kind of liquidity path. 8, when you talk to a venture capitalist, it is really important how you get to that venture capitalist. Really important. Venture capital is still a cottage industry in many ways. So do not submit business plans cold to any kind of website and hope that it gets picked up. If you want to have success in a venture capital deal, you need to be introduced by somebody who that VC firm trusts. Fortunately, MIT has lots of faculty in bioengineering, chemical engineering, Whitehead, Koch, Broad. All of these senior faculty members know all of the venture capitalists in this town and probably around the world. When it's time for you to do something along the lines of talking to a venture capitalist, talk to one of these gray hairs and have them introduce you to a venture partner. You will get your business plan looked at much more seriously than if you called somebody cold. That almost never succeeds. I've never heard of an example in my experience where that's been successful. 9, don't skimp on legal advice. This is, again, obvious, but it's very difficult to take this advice when, if you've raised a bit of money, particularly angel money, a few $100,000, you want to preserve every last dollar. Lawyers are expensive. Good lawyers are more expensive. And yet you need to have that kind of legal oversight in order to make sure that your intellectual property is properly prosecuted. MIT uses the best lawyers in the world, so when they do something, you can bet that it's done right. But when you start going off on your own, you may be shocked at how much those lawyers charge. In most cases, they really aren't trying to rip you off. It's just that they're dealing with lots of successful biotech entrepreneurs, and if you want them to work for you, you sort of need to pay them what market value is. And it's really important to get it right at the very start. And finally, crank up the energy. This, again, is pretty obvious. I don't need to tell an MIT audience. But entrepreneurs, when you ask them what they invest in, when you ask these VCs what they're looking for in entrepreneurs, the first thing they'll do is to say, I'm looking for the eye of the tiger. I want to see somebody not who's looking to get some research funded. I want to see somebody who wants to change the world. And actually, we are in a period where the world is ready for change. Biomedicine is at an inflection point. You've heard this from many people. And the reason that I know it's true is because my colleagues here at MIT tell me it's true. Susan Hockfield, Tyler Jackson, Phil Sharp published this volume on convergence in the life sciences, engineering, physical sciences. It's all coming together. And the omics revolution has really underscored all of these incredible changes. But the one omics that most people don't think about, the one that I think is really critical to get right, is economics. We've got to get that right. And I think if you take these bits of advice, all of you will be very successful at it.